I'm Alexander Marlow, editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and host of Breitbart News Daily. And this is a special edition, a Breitbart News Daily special. We are speaking to some of the cast and crew of the runaway hit, My Son Hunter, which you can get right now at mysonhunter.com. We're about a week into the release at this point, and it's clear that this thing has generated some of the most buzz, I think, in pop culture from a conservative perspective in my lifetime, which is so exciting. And today we've got a special panel of a lot of the producers and stars and the director. And it is really great to see all of these great faces on our Zoom as well, because we're simulcasting this. It'll be available at Breitbart via Zoom, as well as, of course, our colleagues at SiriusXM who will put it out and presumably rerun this over and over and over again to create maximum exposure for the incredible My Son Hunter. We've got the producers of the film, Anne McElhinney and Phelim McAleer. We've got the director, Robert Davi, the star who plays Joe Biden, John James. And we've also got we've got a handful of other surprises, I think, for you throughout the broadcast today. And I want to get started with Phelim and Anne because the origin story of this project, this is where I think I want to hear about most of anything. No offense to John and Robert, but I do think that I want to hear about the Unreported Story Society, how this came to be, and what it took to get this thing to become a feature film where you could get it and see it in its glossy glory that we've seen over the last week.
Well, I'll start, and you can help me along the way. I think it started. I suppose it started with the previous movie we did, Gosnell. You know, at the time we'd made documentaries, we'd done a few plays and that, but we assumed that someone was going to tell the Gosnell story about the Philadelphia abortion doctor. We assumed that someone was going to make a movie. And at one stage I realized, oh my God, no one's going to do this, so we have to do it. So we did that. We thought, could we raise the money through crowdfunding? We did. We got 30,000 people, $2.3 million. So then that was the template for, here's another outrageous story that is being suppressed by the mainstream media, by the world, by big tech on these occasions. And our 501c3 is called the Unreported Story Society. So it's kind of what we were set up to do.
Yes.
And it started, then this film started on our back patio in Venice, California, a crack pipe throw away from Hunter Biden's residence at the time. And
you're saying basically we're talking about nearly almost 2 years ago on our patio where we come up with this idea. As Phelim says, a very suppressed story. And what's a better way to tell it? You know, what's a better way to tell it? A documentary? No. A political speech? No. We've had enough of them. An entertaining film that people can easily watch and will be madly and wildly entertained by. Yeah, I think that sounds like the way to go.
Yeah, and so we had I remember looking at our social media person saying, like, do you think we can raise the money for this? And she goes, absolutely. I knew the story was there. So we started the campaign to raise the money, which is what producers do. Then we knew Brian Godawa. This is a story of sex, drugs, rock and roll, corruption, debauchery, just plain craziness. So who better than an evangelical Christian to write that? I have to say, I looked twice now at Brian Godawa after he wrote that script, and we got a script. I think we always wanted Lawrence Fox, and I can't remember, what the time was. And then we needed a director, and Magda, who's our colleague, said, "What about Robert Davi?" And I said, "Robert Davi won't be interested in this movie. He's Robert Davi. My God, he's not going to." Magnus kept, and the emails are there. What about she just would write Robert Davi every few days. So eventually, I did the thing of going on IMDb Pro, finding his manager's name, and sending off a cold call email to his manager. And Robert, the rest is history. Robert, you can take it from there, I think.
Well, I've known of the Unreported Society because, of course, what they did with Dean Cain and Christie, exposing that Lovebird story, and also Gosnell. Yeah. And now the script comes along. I say to people, it just dropped out of the air. And my whole frustration with the story not being told was at its peak, I think. So the script comes along and I'm going, oh, okay, what's this going to be? And he tells me they want you to do this and that. And I read it, and I said, this is a terrific script. It was a terrific script. And the first thing you want to see is how I'm going to interpret. What am I going to bring to this? So I thought about that. And I knew that I could put a certain spin on this, that I felt my way into it. And I told them, I had a conversation, and I mentioned the film that I fashioned it after. And they were just very open to that, and open to, I'm not saying, we had Phelim and I, and it's like being in the lane, a tiger cage with a bunch of tigers.
Oh yeah, it's really amusing.
And Brian,
it's really fun, huge fun.
It's fun, but you're kind of pecking at each other. I mean, it's intense, and I'm an intense guy.
Yes.
Yes.
And I saw the film a certain way, and but that's what great creativity comes from. Mm-hmm. That's what a good product comes from. That push and pull. So then I became part of the project and started working with Brian Gadowa, and we wound up in Serbia.
Yeah,
just before you go on, actually, just to say, I always wanted I always wanted Lawrence Fox to play the lead role, but almost with the same passion. I had almost the same passion for wanting John James to play Joe Biden. And I was always saying it to Phelim, before, we were still getting ourselves together and getting organized and getting the script and getting the money and all of that. And I had always said, I really wanted to have John James, because we had worked with John James before. And it was such a wonderful experience. And I love John, and I would love to get to do other things with John again. And I always tell the story, because it's like, this is the weird thing about this entertainment business. How freaking weird is this business? You have a situation where, like, I'm a girl from a small town in Ireland. I lusted after that man as a teenager when he played Jeff Colby in Dynasty, and I will admit and confess to having impure thoughts about him, to be honest with you. And to now find myself, like a best friend forever with John. And as I said, just gorgeous to work with John, and we just loved him. And I think Robert, you could say this better than me, but my God, did this guy knock it completely out of the park, or what?
Can I bring in John at this point? Because yes. I want to hear you
just say one thing to
go ahead.
What you said, Robert, we can bring in the John. I had they had mentioned John, and of course I knew John, but it wasn't the you go on an actor's. People always think of an actor's work. You know what I mean? What they've done before, and what I did was I researched all the actors actually intensively, and I researched John, and I saw an interview he did in Australia, and I saw Biden. I said, if I can capture this, it's going to be terrific. And that's what happened. And I called him. I says, yes. So John, take over, baby.
You know what I'm talking from doing this roundtable with you guys, I'm just very surprised to hear Robert call himself intense. I found him just
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I thought, intense, Robert? Yeah, I was shocked. Alex, every night at our hotel, the Metropole in Belgrade, we had our de-stressing nights. Little lounge, and we would call it Mr. Davi is holding court. And Robert was there with a cigar.
I've been to that lounge. It wasn't in Belgrade when I was there, but I've been to it in D.C. and L.A. and over the phone a few times.
And it was just fantastic. We would discuss everything from X to Y-Z and from A to Z. And it was just a marvelous, marvelous experience. And Robert said to me, he said, yeah, I looked you up. I didn't want Joe to be a caricature. I wanted this kind of quality you have. And he told me he watched me on this Australian interview show that I did a year ago, I guess, or I don't know when it was, but a recent one. And that's what I've been saying about how blessed we are. I called a friend of mine, a very well-known actor, works a lot. He's on a series now on television. And I told him, I said, it looks like I may be playing Joe Biden right now, a sitting president in a feature film, and it's going to be controversial. He goes, oh, brother. He said, who's directing? I said, Robert Davi. He said, oh, shit. Don't worry about it. He said, he'll take care of you. He's great. Mm-hmm. Robert said, and, he set out, and just briefly, if Robert's not intense, or is he intense? I think too fast. And we had a day where I just wasn't getting it. And Robert said, try it again. And I want you, and Robert would say, I want you to do, no, I got it. It's okay. Okay, let's go. Let's do it again. So this happened about 4 or 5 times. And Robert would say, well, let's do it again. No. I got it. Back to 1. Finally, the last time I did it, I said, I got it. He said, no, you don't got it, because if you got it, we wouldn't be doing it again. Now, yes, sir.
So, John, I want to ask you about there's so much that goes in the alchemy of movie making. And this is the first movie I've been a part of, but I grew up in Hollywood, and I kind of seen the inside of the business to a degree. And there's something that is the whole has to be greater than the sum of its parts. There's so many huge decisions with the script and the director, and just the way you choose certain decisions as the actors. But one of the things that really was crucial to me is that you didn't portray Joe Biden like a caricature or a buffoon. There were a couple of great moments, like the moment where he holds up the phone upside down, which I loved. But for the most part, you do portray him more like a mob boss or someone who is running an international crime syndicate. I thought that was a brilliant choice. Where did it come from? I imagine this was collaborative. I imagine it wasn't just you alone who kind of went with this choice, but it's such a big decision that I think makes the film so much better.
It was joint, but my first task after I agreed to do it, I thought, okay, let's throw everything out. Let's go back to basics. And let's look at this character, this man. And exactly what you said, I didn't want to make it a caricature. I'm not going to play it for laughs. And I think that comedy is reality, but it's blown up. It's exploded. It's enlarged. So I decided that this is really 2 stories here. It's tragic because I grew up in a very wealthy town in Fairfield County, Connecticut. And you could have switched out Joe Biden and Hunter with any of my friends in high school, big executives, presidents of banks. And their kids were the same way that Hunter was. So I said, okay, let's look at the truth in this. Let's look at the truth of father and son sitting in the back of an SUV. The father is in a suit with Secret Service, and the son is in a terry cloth robe and scarf. And that's the tragedy of this. That's why this is such an interesting multi-level film that Robert and Phelim have done here. It's just a multi-level. It has so many deep levels to it. I have my thoughts about Hunter in this laptop situation. Is this to get back at his dad? Or was he just completely...
Well, we explore that in the film, but I want to talk a minute about your performance, John, because that's what we're focusing on for a second. And it was a pleasure to work with you. And it's funny because an actor comes in with a conceived notion, and sometimes he doesn't see from the outside what you're looking at. But it's a funny thing, and like John explained to you, that repartee, and you have to have the trust of the actor and the trust of the director. And John gave that to me explicitly. And there's a certain moment in the film when I use and no one's picked up on it, but in the movie theater, when the behind the scenes, what's playing is the Odessa Steps from Einstein's Potemkin. And it was to suggest something else. But I said to John, I need 15 seconds of you coming in. I need to so I can bring the camera around and give the move I want. So he thinks a bit. I think it was was it that day or the night before? When was it? But he comes up with the greatest entrance to this about the 83.
Robert, I need, just give me some time so the camera can come around on you. And I said, okay, I'll come up with something. And the line was this: Dad, don't you remember 83,000? And I came up with 83,000. No, I'd remember that. You could forget something like 80,000 or 85,000, maybe even 90,000, but 83,000? That's a weird number, son. Do you understand me?
And when you have very good. When you have a great actor, you can do that. I learned that from Dick Donner and Spielberg, whereby there's moments when you need something to fill in and leave it up to the actor that's in the character. And one of the first things, and John, you could tell them this, because it's difficult getting off a plane, playing a character, setting a role, getting to know the crew. But there was one moment that maybe there's a few things that maybe there'll be some DVD later on that'll show these moments. But there's a long walk that I gave John coming from the Ukrainian government after he had this nice conversation. And that's where we set this character, I think, also, where we set the subtlety of the character. John, you can explain that a second.
Well, again, because we had to make cuts, obviously, for the film, but originally, as it was directed and photographed, I walk out of the Ukrainian embassy, and I come up, and I go to shake a guy's hand. These are all Robert's notes, by the way. This was basically 2 lines. 2 lines. I thought, this is a piece of cake. Walk over here, don't shake his hand, turn away, go over and shake this guy's hand, hold his hand, look up at the cathedral, stare, then drop his hand. Go back to the guy who didn't shake his hand and say, "Where you been?" Shake his hand. Over to Secret Service.
Way, this is after a 13-hour flight.
Yes.
Or more.
Yeah, this is John James's first day, right, John?
It was, and then I walk, and then I grab the guy, and then he says, "Okay, walk by the SUV, miss the SUV, come back to the SUV, misstep." And then it was just 17 individual beats. We call them beats in the business that an actor has to.
It's a brilliant piece of, and I wish it was. This is one of the things in filmmaking that you have to go with when producers want to move on.
This is where we get thrown under the bus now.
Not under the bus, not at all. It's just that we want to have fun.
So we got to take a break here. And then when we come back, I'm going to turn to Ann and Phelim, and I want to ask you guys about the opportunity that you see in this space now, because you guys have made some great documentaries. You're moving into narrative film, and it just seems like the world could be your oyster, especially if you can find talent like Robert and John to do it. But I want to get your thoughts on the bigger picture.
They're very smart. They're very bright. They're Irish, but they're absolutely talented and fearless, and I love it about them. And Anne can go with the best of them in a round. I'm telling you, I've seen her. I've seen the cat fight, and she has a lot of it in her, and it's good.
Wait a minute, was that it's Robert passion. Or Phelim talking? Because this is radio for the most part, so we can't.
That was me doing my bad film because I like to.
Well, it's hard to. I'm confused, and I'm watching the thing on Okay, let's take a break. We'll be right back. This is a Breitbart News Daily special, and I'm Alex Marlow. All right, we're here with the cast and crew of My Son Hunter, mysonhunter.com, the producer of the film, Ann McElhinney, and Phelim McAleer, as well as the star who plays Joe Biden, John James, Robert Davi, the director, who needs no introduction to this audience, and most audiences. Phelim and Ann, I want to go to you. Maybe, Phelim, you can start. You guys have been doing this for a really long time. You've been making content for conservatives, with conservatives in mind. And obviously you'd like a broader appeal, and you have it to some degree. You made some pretty terrific documentaries. The fracking one is really great, among others. But you're sort of moving into narrative film. And what made you think that narrative is the way to go? And do you see stories like the Gosnell story and the Hunter Biden story is just Hollywood ceding tons of territory to you that you can just take over on your own without much contest because they won't cover these stories?
Yeah, I mean, if Hollywood and the media did their job, we'd be unemployed, because they just leave these great stories lying there.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, Gosnell was a slam dunk story to be told. It's got if it bleeds, it leads. That kind of storyline to it. And then we did FBI Lovebirds, which is a complete comedy. I mean, Hollywood did the Comey Rule, which is a 6-hour snore about the Russia collusion hoax, whereas we did the FBI Lovebirds, which is the text messages of Strzok and Page, part John le Carrier, part teen romance. It's a comedy with a very serious twist to it. So Anne, what do you think? Why are we here? Why are we doing this? And what's the future?
Unfortunately, conservatives spend too much time making political speeches, spend too much time. It's very interesting. One of the challenges I've had when I was raising money for this film was to try and explain what a movie is to conservatives. Because when you say movie to conservatives, they say So it's a documentary. And it's like, so it's not a documentary. And I find myself saying to conservatives, it's a movie. Like, you need to say the word twice. It's like a movie. I literally say this to people. It's a movie, like with actors in it, like a movie. And the fact that you need to say that tells you a lot about conservatives. Great point. And I mean, we have all the best stories are our stories, are the conservative stories, because they're true stories. And we have a ton of them. We have about 20 movies we'd like to make, and we should be making them. And by the way, this is what we have ceded this territory. Conservatives, I don't know what happened here in Hollywood. I don't know how it happened, but something terrible has happened. And all the territory is owned. And I mean owned, like we're talking about every part of the arts territory, museums, ballet, plays. So what we're doing is we're making art. So we have made plays now. We have had a number of plays. We did a Ferguson play based entirely on the transcripts of the grand jury, which was extraordinary, and opened in New York and was and opened here as well. We had the cast walk out. We have done very recently, we did a true crime podcast about the Gosnell story. It was the top 10 on the planet, true crime, because people like entertainment. Most people, I mean, I think, Alex, like people like you, right? You and, by the way, you and us, right, love like the politics, and we read the politics.
Yes.
The rest of the world is not Alex Marlow and Anne McElhinney, right? The rest of the world work hard, don't get on with their husband, or have had a bad day. They come home, they crack open a beer, and they turn the TV on, and they want to be entertained. And we're not there. And we're missing an opportunity by not being there, because these are good people and they just want to be entertained. They do not want a political speech, and they do not want a documentary. They've had enough documentaries and they've had enough political speeches. And we're on our side, I think there's a massive failing with this constant political speech. And it's, by the way, the worst thing is, as somebody who is a recent arrival in this country, it's the same speech. I've been to a number of these political conferences, and if I hear the words of Ronald Reagan and the City on a Hill again, I am going to kill myself in a public display at one of these things, because it's like, really, let's kind of, and I'm not, no denigration to Ronald Reagan, magnificent, but I think he said a lot of things in his life, and I think the same quotes get overheard. So we should be making entertainment. We have, and fun things, not just, this is a very fun movie because of Robert, because of John. But we should be making comedies, we should be making romance, we should be doing religious films, everything, all of it, all of the above. And we should be singing, and we should dance, and we should have a museum, and we should stop. And
we should do stand-up comedy, because you do it very well, Anne. Anne is very funny, by the way.
I've seen Phelim and Anne on the stage.
You haven't.
No, she's done stand-up.
I haven't seen you stand-up. Oh, wow, you're doing stand-up now.
I did my stand-up. I'm getting paid to stand-up. Shocker.
That's incredible. And that is the type of stuff that you guys are all in a position to be pioneers here. And I've spoken to John and Robert about this on my podcast. If you guys want to catch up, the Breitbart News Daily podcast, you guys can, we've talked about exactly what Ian's discussing, about the needs for aesthetics first and politics second is the way to go. And this movie's really nailed it. But I do think there's one other thing, Robert, that is so big here. I think there's one other reason why this particular story was untold, is that people forget that Joe Biden is China's guy, is Hollywood's guy in China. And this is something that is a pretty deep connection to how Joe Biden mapped out the path for essentially Hollywood outsourcing their intellectual property to China. China learned how to make films because guys like Joe Biden made it easy for him to do it. And I think that this is a untold part of this story, because the fact that Hollywood won't touch these types of stories, I do think is partially because they're so subservient to China at this point. China obviously does not like that this movie is out there. And I think there's a deep connection here in how Biden is friends with China, friends with Hollywood at the same time. And lo and behold, one of the greatest stories of our time, the Hunter Biden story, doesn't get made by Hollywood. It's just too coincidental for me.
Well, in 2012, Joe Biden met with Xi Jinping when he was vice president. And I've said this before. I think I was telling to one of our colleagues there at Breitbart about it, because it's a story that's been hidden and not been told, and people don't understand it. But he met with them, and the Hollywood contingent, I won't mention the names of huge producers, that met with also Xi Jinping and Joe Biden to open the door to Chinese and the Hollywood connection to China. So people go, well, what's the story? What's the headline? I have a friend of mine. He says, what's the headline? And I want to stick his head somewhere because the headline is, what do you think? Hunter Biden working with China. Joe Biden sets up the Chinese for, that was the go-to guy. He was, like you said, he was the point guy, Hollywood's point guy in China, Joe Biden. So how do you get Hollywood's point guy in China? And how can you not say that what we see in culture that Ann was talking about, and that the left has been squelching when you have so many important people going, he's our guy in China. So this is a huge thing. And I think this film, you know, look, it's like a great middle finger to the big tech and the establishment who tried to bury the story and the media and Hollywood. It's another little middle finger because of that, because they're not forthcoming in anything. They're not forthcoming. And meanwhile, the people that Ann talked about, the good, hardworking people that want to crack open a beer and be entertained, or they want to watch a film, or they want to learn about something, and they want to do the right thing, are being misled. And that's an important point. And that's one of the reasons why I think this film is necessary, because you can crack open a beer, you can sit back, get titillated, have some laughs, and also go, oh my God, did this really happen?
Yeah.
And then find out for yourself.
And this is a crucial thing that I know any of you guys can speak to. So feel free, whoever wants to dive in. But it is a really subtle balance because the film is rooted in facts. And this does resonate with a lot of people in the core of the Breitbart audience. But it also is rooted in entertainment, which I think resonates with a broader audience. And that's a really tough balance to make. And I do find that sometimes conservatives get it wrong one direction or the other. So Phelim, do you want to chip in?
Well, yeah, I mean, we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves, by the way. Look, the left do this all the time. They do boring movies about facts. The problem is that critics don't say that. They say it's wonderful. And, you know, and we were damned if we did and damned if we didn't. If we crammed it full of facts, they'd say it's boring. If we didn't put full of facts, they'd say it's fiction and it has no credibility. So, you know, you obviously you have to be entertaining. I have to give Robert, and this hurts me to give Robert the credit. Right? Horrible. It's not easy. But I mean, he took some exposition scenes and shocked me by let's just say made them entertaining. But I don't think your granny would like some of the entertainment, right? So he really elevated factual story. I mean, he had Joe Biden in a Superman cape. He had Lawrence delivering lines whilst in a rather interesting position, let's say. You know, he had the word, I'll never look at the word consulting in the same way again. So, you know, we shouldn't pay too much attention to the critics who say there's too much facts, there's not enough facts, because it's a great big world out there. You can make a movie full of facts. You can make it, as long as there's a good story there, good direction, that's cinematography, good acting. You know, it's a story. So let's. Can
I just interrupt there as well and just say, John Nolte, by the way, in Breitbart wrote the most amazing piece, and I loved. He was looking at the left who are melting down over this and gone completely over the top. Emma Brock's, for example, in The Guardian, you know, who body shames Lawrence, really, really, really nasty, really horrible. But John Nolte's piece, which I'd highly recommend everyone to read, you know, so they had the Rolling Stone woman, right? She wrote 35 points about the film, but one of the points was, you know. And they seem to, you know, they're humanizing Hunter. And as John Nolte says, yeah, that's right. You know, that's Robert Davi, by the way. Yes, that was Robert Davi's idea. And by the way, we have people writing to us all the time. People have watched the movie and people are really, really impressed with that this wasn't some kind of hack job of kind of making this guy one-dimensional. You know, this is a real person who, you know, and has suffered and all kinds of things, but is up to, you know, a lot of no good and all of that. But I just thought it was really funny. John Nolte's piece is so it's just classic. Yeah. This whole thing of, they humanize Hunter. It's like, it's called a movie, by the way. The
girl that wrote that piece on the Rolling Stone had been a Media Matters person. And her next job was this Rolling Stone. So you're going to find all of that. I always go to that source. and you find what they're doing. It's just incredible.
I was stunned by, I was reading an article in the LA Magazine by someone who was reviewing the film, even though they clearly hadn't. She hadn't seen it. And we were able to deduce that from the write-up. And we emailed her, we said, did you actually see it? And she said, no. She admitted, even though
at least she's honest.
She reviewed it. But she had a line about John that predictably my son Hunter leans into being as cruel as possible, particularly in the mockery of the president's speech. John, that isn't remotely what you were doing with that role.
Not even slightly.
Here's a good take on all of this. They're writing about us, even without seeing the movie. It's something that
I love that. That's a headline. They're writing about us, even without seeing the movie.
Yeah.
That's a perfect headline.
Davi, do you want a job? I need a managing editor.
No. I'm just saying it's funny.
And let me just tell you something. I wasn't expecting brilliant reviews from the Rolling Stone, the Guardian, the Independent. Of course not. However, when I started reading them, bourbon in hand, I might add.
A lot of bourbon in hand, by the way. That's what was happening in Serbia in the evenings.
Now, Robert, what happens in Serbia stays in Serbia. I think that's a well-known phrase, right?
What kind of bourbon selection they have in Serbia? It's getting pretty bleak out here in the States. I imagine.
Who cares? Who cares?
Hey, it was very funny because John would come down, after a day. We'd be filming. I'm filming every day, and he'd be in the room for a bit of time before we started to film. And he would get, antsy, and he'd come down and he goes, I've got my bourbon.
By the way,
we really had the best time shooting.
Do you remember when John walked into a restaurant door? Walked into a restaurant door when we were in Serbia and had to go to the hospital. And he was very careful to point out, I was on my way into the restaurant. I wasn't coming from the restaurant. But John,
he was leaving the restaurant.
No, he was going in. He was going in. John, how many bourbons were there before you?
Oh, this is unfair. I'm calling a halt to this. This is cruel and unnatural punishment.
Don't forget, Phelim, Anne had a big crush on John. We got to be careful here.
Yes, I'm always going to defend John.
That's so funny.
At the end of the story, the funny thing is I end up at the hospital. It's a Soviet styled hospital with pale green walls. And I had a group of fellows with me, and the hotel manager and the doctor who knew the head of the emergency room. They said, don't worry, you're not going to have to wait in line. And there were about 30 or 40 people lined up against the wall in various states of emergency care, needing emergency care. And here I come in with my hair white, my white eyebrows, tall, an escort around me, like Secret Service walking me. And I'm just imagining these people are going, Joe Biden.
it's just method acting, including the running of the wall. And you got to forgive me. I take a break.
Can I just say one thing about John that I think is really funny? I mean, because Robert is saying that I had this massive crush, right, on John James back in the day.
Well, you said it earlier.
And I said, and he was reminding us, right? And it's true. But what's even more interesting is that when we went to the hotel, the manager of the hotel had the massive crush on John James. And John was coming in from the airport, and Phelim and I were waiting for him. And we could see the manager running back and forth. I was thinking, my God, is everything okay, Nicholas? And he said, John James is coming to my hotel. And he had all the staff out to meet him. And I remember when John got hurt, like basically the manager wanted to kind of be the one to nurse him. And I was like, no, I think we might send him off to the hospital. But I just think I have to mention that. And also, by the way, to mention that John has fans all over the world. And one of them drove from Germany to see John. And I tried to tell the guy to turn around. And he said, I'm halfway there. I've only got another day's drive to go. And he did. And he came to Belgrade.
On this, and we're filming at a location. It's in the riding arena. And our production manager came up to me and said, John, do you know they're reshooting the entire series of Dynasty in Serbia? They've licensed every episode, all 235 episodes. I said, what? And they were filming here 2 days ago. Would you like to meet the young actor who's playing your role? I said, are you kidding? And there I am standing with a kid who...
not to wind you up.
40 years later, I'm standing with him in Serbia, and they're doing it in Serbian.
That's amazing. All roads lead to Serbia, I guess. I know I got to get Robert out of here, but we still got one more segment. So we're going to take a quick break. This is a Breitbart News Daily special with the cast and crew of My Son Hunter, mysonhunter.com. We're going to say goodbye to Robert Davi. Robert, come back whenever you like.
Enjoy everything. Thank you so much, Alex. Everybody, love all of you. And just want to tell John something. Did the manager of the hotel upgrade your room to a suite?
Oh!
I just want to throw that in, just a little dig.
Yes.
Because, I'm an actor at heart. You know what I'm saying? We have to.
I was say this. I was very comfortable. Thank you.
I know.
Yes.
That's very good.
Bless you all.
Sounds like no.
Bye, Robert.
Bye, guys.
Robert, I just want to tell you something too, Robert. A couple of podcasts have mentioned the Potemkin battleship Potemkin in the background. Yes, I'll send you those clips, and they actually say this is this general. They actually said among a lot of nasty stuff, moments of hauteur where an hauteur is there, and they mentioned that particular scene, and they mentioned you. So
I didn't know that. See, I don't see any of this stuff.
It's on a podcast behind a paywall kind of thing.
I guess so.
Okay. I really do have to get Robert out, or else there'll be some consequences. I've not been. Yes. Okay.
I love you all, Alex. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Robert. There's always fun when we're on together. We'll be on together.
John, go hit the bourbon and get on that stage and Phelim.
He's got another segment with you, Robert. If you let me pay some bills here.
I'm saying after I'm going. I'm saying later on. This is like not now.
You don't have to tell him to do that. It's the guy got bourbon in Serbia. I mean, he's
probably got one right there. Good night. Bye.
Oh my goodness. Bye, Robert. Oh my goodness. You guys are here to party. All right, we're taking a break. Phelim and John James will be with me for one more segment in this special. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Final segment here at Breitbart News Daily special on My Son Hunter with producers Phelim McAleer and McElhinney and John James, who plays the president of the United States and does a great job at that. John, I got a question for you. You were the Hollywood legend status. You are star of Dynasty, and now you find yourself as a pioneer in this new conservative media ecosystem. Are you? Give me your thoughts on the evolution in your career. I mean, you really fit the Biden role so well, and I've been very complimentary about it, as has just about everyone else that I've read. But tell me about where you are right now, why you think this is such an important step for you.
Well, it's funny. I was thinking, I hope it's not bookends. I hope it's not. But my brother said to me, this is probably the most important work you've ever done as an actor. And I agree with him. Dynasty was a worldwide phenomenon. I mean, here I am with Anne. She was in Ireland. It was a huge success all over the world. As a matter of fact, I was researching something and I found an article from the LA Times from 1985 regarding Dynasty in Yugoslavia at the time. And the communist government in Yugoslavia was fighting tooth and nail to get Dynasty off the air because it represented an ill faith for the workers of Yugoslavia. They did not succeed. As far as making this picture, I certainly had to think about it. It's something you don't take lightly, especially in today's political climate and playing a sitting president. However, the script is so damn good. I'm sorry. I said, Phelim, let me read it over the weekend. Let me think about this, and I'll call you sometime next week. And I read the script Sunday morning with a cup of coffee, and I thought, shit, I gotta call Phelim now. This is just great. This is just too good. And I called him Monday morning and I said, I'm in. And what's important here, and you guys at Breitbart taking this step is the right thing to do, because I think this is the future. Speaking with a hedge fund guy who's shorting Netflix, by the way, because I think it's going to go right from producer straight out to the consumer without subscriptions, such as you. There will be different levels. And I also think that we will be able to reach more and more people in the future, in 5 years. Without a subscription, you put it out there and you say, hey, you got to watch our film. Bam, you got 10 million people watching. And that's going to be the future, because the gatekeepers in Hollywood, they're gatekeepers. I also think that I call them posers, because they really don't believe it. They're posers. But if you go after their expensive car or their house, that's not going to happen. So they pose. And there's fear. Fear is really a motivator out there in Hollywood. I don't think there are as many people as you think who believe in all this stuff, but it's fear. So you just kind of toe the line, and that's a dangerous thing. And you know what? I'm such a conservative guy. Really, I am. Always have been. And for me to think that I'm a radical now. I am a radical. When I was out there in that bar with the guys, I felt like a gypsy.
Yeah.
In this movie, oh, is this good? Here I am. I mean, you know me, I tell Ann, I said, Ann, I get nervous because I have nothing to get nervous about. But that's kind of where I am right now. I don't know where this is going to take me. I hope I have a very liberal friend of mine, very liberal, who thinks that people will look at this for my work as Joe. And I said, well, I hope you're right. I mean, and I said to him, I said, would you play Donald Trump in a picture like this? And he said, yeah, I would. So you follow me? It's a very
well. This kind of dovetails to where I want to go with Phelim and Ann, which is you guys have to feel like the world's your oyster at this point. So do you know what's next? Is it my daughter Ashley? Is it my brother Frank? I mean, do you guys know what's coming?
So if we told you, Alex, we'd have to kill you.
I figured I'd get that answer, but I had to ask.
I think it's always important to keep people guessing, you know, or not people, but keep changing it up. You know, we did Gosnell, which is a tough gig, you know, it's a trial about a mass murderer. Then we did FBI Lovebirds. Then we did Ferguson, the play, you know, and then we did My Son Hunter, which is an absurdist comedy. So look, you know, there are many ways to skin a cat. No offense to our cats.
Please don't offend the cats, Phelim.
Yes, scaredy. I just say hello to Scaredy Cat and Top Cat there. But you know, so people need to think about poetry. They need to think about photo shoots or exhibitions.
Yep.
They need to think about rom-coms. They need to think about all
the above.
Anywhere people get their entertainment, we need to be there. And podcasts, narrative podcasts, and all these. You know, there are many people just, you know, actually people just say, you know, how did you make that? I love that documentary. How did you make, you know, what was your inspiration behind it? And I said, Michael Moore is the most impressive, most successful documentary filmmaker in the last 50 years. We looked at what he did and copied him. You know, the left have been doing this for 50 years. So let's not reinvent the wheel, and let's just take their genres and tell the truth through them.
And on the flip side of this, one of the things that my audience loves most about the movie is you use entertainment to get true content out there. Or were there any stories that going through it and looking at Godawa's script that made you think, oh yeah, I can't believe this actually happened. This is just really amazing that we're going to actually put this in a absurdist comedy, but this is a true fact. Were there one or two items that jump out at you?
Well, I mean, I always quote the $83,000, you know, I mean, you know, and, you know, people are watching the movie and they're like, you know, here's a guy, you know, and all of the big facts in the film are all true, and they're all taken from like a lot of it from his own book and from lots of sources. But I mean, there's no doubting all of this stuff. He said himself in his book that he smoked crack cocaine every 20 minutes, that he didn't sleep for weeks, that he would go to the Chateau Marmont, sit at the pool, and have a bill of, I think it was $600, not buying anyone else a drink, right? And that the barman would be looking at him thinking, my God, this guy's standing, right? And so in the movie, when you mentioned the fact that this guy was getting $83,000 a month for 5 years, by the way, for 5 years, and the fact that those guys, he was on the board of this, you know, energy company, you know, they were getting good value, that they were, you know, these are not idiots. These people are not idiots. So I think when people watch it and start to see the accumulation of the money, he meets the Chinese, he gets this, you know, diamond ring, he gets these credit cards with 100, you know, I mean, Alex, I'm sure that happens to you the whole time. Like you just meet people and they say to you, here, Alex, listen, here's a little bit of something for yourself. Do you know what I mean? Go off there and go and have a nice wee shopping trip there. 100,000 on this, you know, sure, everyone listening to this will think, sure, that happens to us the whole time, right?
Right.
So I think there's moments like that where people are going to go, oh my God, it is nice to be a Biden. You know, we're Irish, obviously. We've exported alcoholism around the world, so we can't be at all smug about addiction. However, most addicts that we know, and I think most addicts that most people know, come up on their uppers and end up in a very bad place and then maybe make a decision to do something else. This guy, no matter how bad things got, he always ends up in a good place. And there's a reason.
There's
a reason for that, and including the fact, which I know you know about, Alex, that when we were out there, that this lawyer arrived on a private jet. And here you go, and that lawyer, as we subsequently find out, is one of 30 lawyers working for this guy Hunter Biden. Many of the listeners here have been in legal, difficulties. I doubt there's anyone that is listening to this who had 30 lawyers taking care of an alcoholic addicted guy who had got up to no good. I mean, it's kind of an extraordinary. These are some of the facts that are kind of extraordinary.
I was thinking about a fact that I unearthed when I was researching my book last year, that Hunter Biden flew out of Joint Base Andrews 23 times while Joe was vice president, and perhaps even more. But that's where Air Force One and Air Force Two is. And if he was really smoking crack every 20 minutes, it implies that he smoked crack on Air Force Two, because he couldn't have flown to China or Ukraine without getting his crack hit. So it's just an amazing scandal, and the media totally uninterested in any of this. In fact, if anything, they suppressed it all via Facebook and Twitter. We have new details on that came out fresh right before the movie came out. The movie My Son Hunter, of course, is what we're talking about.
That's an interesting one, by the way, Alex. By the way, It makes me. There's another. There's a fresh take on the diplomatic pouch, right? Because obviously that's one of the big advantages of traveling in as a diplomat. With the government, your stuff doesn't get gone through by the authorities at any border. So yeah.
And so this is the last thing I really wanted to plug today, which was, and I mentioned at the beginning, but the Unreported Story Society. This is such a big thing that's going on, and I want you guys to talk about it and tell people a little more about it and how they can support it if there's a way to do so.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we have a 501c3 called the Unreported Story Society. And what we do is we do exactly this kind of thing. We made plays, we made podcasts, and we're using entertainment to get these true stories out there, stories that are being suppressed. And people can go to unreportedstorysociety.com and donate right now. And we would really appreciate it. We how we get to do this and keep doing this is because of donations from good people all over the country who have responded and who really get what we're trying to do, to tell stories in a different way, in a more accessible way. And by telling the stories that way, we get a new audience. We're not just talking to the choir. We're talking way beyond that. And we've had this experience before. I'm seeing it now. I just got it literally yesterday. I saw a message, I think it was on Twitter, and I can send it to you, Alex, where somebody said, my father watched the movie. And he has always voted, Democrat all his life or whatever. And he had voted for Joe Biden. And if he had known this, he might have, he had whatever. So kind of extraordinary, this is going all over the place, this story. So yeah, we're the Unreported Story Society, and people can go to the unreportedstorysociety.com and donate wildly. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a great thing that's going on, and the movie wouldn't have been possible without it. So congrats to you, Anne, and you, Phelim, on this. John, what are your hopes for this? Do you think that maybe for you personally, maybe for the world, My Son Hunter, what do you think it leads to?
Well, I think I agree with what Lawrence has said. I hope that sane Democrats will look at this. Mm-hmm. And I think what's very important is that we get conservatives to look at this. It's not just going out and buying a MAGA hat or a Trump 2024 hat. You got to get behind these projects. You got to support them. You got to let Hollywood know that people are paying to watch this. That's the most important thing. And going forward, I think that, look, Hollywood listens to the dollar. And if more and more films are starting to reach that audience that has not been serviced, that has been overlooked, you can see, they're laying people off at Warner Brothers. Mm-hmm. They're shelving huge $90 million, $100 million projects. It will turn. That's my hope for the future.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to leave it. I'm Alex Marlow, editor-in-chief of Breitbart News. Thanks again to our panel, Ann McElhinney, Phelim McAleer, the producers of My Son Hunter, John James, the star, Robert Davi, of course, is the director. A big shout out to my SiriusXM team, producers Zach and Greg Eben, little boss Greg Sahakian, medium boss Liz Aiello was sort of the impetus for getting this thing going. So really cool stuff. The Unreported Story Society, check that out as well, mysonhunter.com. And as always, Breitbart News Daily, 6 a.m. every weekday morning on Patriot 125 and the Breitbart News Daily podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Thanks to all of you who have shown the love, show the support, and told 10,000 friends and family members about My Son Hunter. Such an important thing, and it's fun. We love it. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you next time.